When John and his girlfriend Emily agreed to take care of Max, their friend Caleb's dog, they never expected things to turn out the way they did. Everything started off smoothly, and Max seemed like a perfectly well-behaved dog. However, John began to worry when Max started exhibiting strange behavior around Emily, frequently jumping on her and never leaving her side. So, John decided to keep a close eye on his girlfriend. What he discovered would change their lives forever. John's best friend, Caleb, was traveling abroad for work for several weeks and couldn't take his beloved Doberman, Max, with him. Normally, Caleb had a young woman who took care of the dog, but she had to cancel at the last minute due to a family emergency. With no time to interview a new dog sitter, John became Caleb's last hope to save his business trip. He had no other option but to seek help from his friend and his girlfriend. As soon as Caleb received the call from the dog sitter saying she couldn't come as planned, he went to John's house, desperate. He explained the situation and practically begged John to take care of Max for 1 or 2 weeks. Initially, John hesitated because he wasn't sure how his girlfriend Emily would react to the idea. She had met Max a few times but had previously said that big dogs made her nervous. However, knowing Caleb's situation, it was hard for her to refuse a friend's request. Fortunately, in the middle of the conversation, Emily arrived home, and John and Caleb could ask for her opinion directly. Caleb explained that Max was an old police dog, very well trained and behaved like a service dog. Both John and Caleb assured Emily that she didn't need to worry or be afraid of having the dog in their home. However, unbeknownst to John, Max's behavior wasn't the cause of his girlfriend's concern. It took some time and persuasion, but Emily felt secure enough to agree to take care of Max while Caleb was away on his work trip. They called Caleb and said they'd be happy to take care of Max this time, though it couldn't become a regular thing. Caleb assured them this would be the only time he'd ask and was very grateful they agreed to look after Max. A few days later, Caleb came over to drop off Max and his things. Even though Max was a large Doberman with a somewhat intimidating appearance, he behaved perfectly, just as Caleb had promised. The dog was already quite old and didn't require as much care as a puppy would. He obeyed all the commands John or Emily gave, stayed close when they went for walks, whether on a leash or not, and generally stayed very quiet at home. Max even sat, shook hands, rolled over, and did many other tricks. As Max settled into his new temporary home, John hoped Emily could relax around the dog. Fortunately, it took only a few days for her to feel comfortable around Max. She even started to enjoy having such a friendly Doberman in the house. However, she set some basic rules. John would walk Max every morning, afternoon, and night, while she would feed Max and pick up any of his toys scattered around the house. That way, they could keep the place clean and well organized. After Emily set the basic rules, John readily agreed. He enjoyed getting out of the house with the dog several times a day. Everything went well for the first few days, and the three of them settled into an easy rhythm. Max behaved like a true gentleman of a dog. Everyone was happy with how things were going, and Max was having a great time at John and Emily's house. But that didn't last long. John soon noticed that Max had started to act quite strangely. After a few days of Max staying at John's house, the couple began to notice the dog was acting oddly. He started barking in the middle of the night or scratching at the bedroom door. However, when John tried to take him to the yard, thinking he might need to go to the bathroom, the dog refused to go outside. Sometimes, he would pace back and forth in front of the couch when Emily was watching TV or sit and stare at her for a long time. This new behavior started to worry the couple so much that John called Caleb about the situation. Confused by Max's behavior, Caleb tried to reassure his friends. It was stressful for Max that Caleb was away, but this time he couldn't stay at home with the sitter he knew. This time, he was with strangers and in a new place. Apparently, his behavior was normal. This all made sense to John and Emily. They decided to trust Caleb's judgment. After a few more days, Max began to calm down and behave like a normal dog again. The couple was relieved. They had no idea it wouldn't last. As soon as Max returned to normal, behaving politely, the couple began to relax. They wanted to get back to the routine they had built with the friendly Doberman. However, one morning, Max entered the couple's bedroom while John was getting Emily ready. He didn't pay much attention to the dog since he often watched her doing everyday things. He put on his socks, only to look up just in time to see Max do something very strange. Without any warning, he made a low growl in his throat and jumped on Emily. Being hit by the full weight of the large Doberman caught John's girlfriend by surprise, and she fell backward onto the bed. Immediately, she was immobilized by his weight. Helpless and terrified, she began to scream. Hearing the noise, John rushed into the room and couldn't believe what he saw. Afraid for his girlfriend, John entered without hesitation, even knowing the situation could be dangerous. He grabbed Max by the collar, pulling the dog away from Emily. The man pushed Max out of the bedroom before closing the door to prevent him from coming back. John, shaken by Max's actions, tried to call his friend at that moment but remembered that Caleb had said he would be out of cell service for a few days. Besides locking the dog outside, there wasn't much they could do for the next few days. Emily, though scared, felt terrible about leaving Max in the rain since they didn't even hurt him. Maybe he was just being playful and didn't know his own strength. However, Emily decided to keep her distance from Max for a while. The only problem was that Max refused to leave her side. Instead, he became very affectionate and always wanted to be with Emily. Often, the dog would lie next to her on the couch and even rest his head on her lap. This behavior made John wonder what could be causing Max to act so strangely around Emily. He was more concerned about why the dog was only acting this way with his girlfriend. From the conversations he had with Caleb, John knew that Max was a police dog but ended up retiring after several years. The young Caleb adopted Max after he retired, so all he knew was that the dog worked for airport police. Now, John began to wonder what role Max played in his years of working for the police. Was he just a general security dog, or was he more of a specialist, like a drug detection dog, for instance? Still unable to contact Caleb, John decided to start with the basics, researching online what types of work dogs are used for at airports. He was surprised by the information he found about the roles of police dogs. Then, John looked up cases of other retired police dogs. John couldn't believe what he was reading and didn't know when he spoke aloud. This can't be possible. What he had discovered was incredible. The more he researched Max's strange behavior, the more John realized it might not be so strange after all. Slowly, his suspicion shifted from Max to Emily. Could it be that he was being paranoid? Ridiculous, most of the warning signs he discovered on the internet didn't fit her. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Since he wasn't clear about the situation, he kept his findings to himself but decided to keep an eye on Emily. The next day, after hours of gathering information online, John noticed something strange about Emily. She definitely started behaving very differently. He noticed that she avoided making eye contact with him and even kept to herself more. Finally, one morning, he found a strange message on her phone, and his suspicions grew more serious. A few days after the strange text message, Emily started acting differently. She mentioned to John that she needed to go into town to pick up something, acting casually. John waited until she left the house and decided to follow her. He put Max in the car and followed his girlfriend as she drove to a gas station outside of town. She parked in the lot for a few minutes, staying in the car with Max whimpering in the back seat. The boyfriend watched, wondering what she was waiting for. He felt a bit guilty for spying like this, but he couldn't help but worry about her behavior. She waited for a bit, hoping to see if John would come upstairs to tell her everything was now okay. But she didn't hear any footsteps on the stairs. So, she decided to come out of hiding and find out for herself. She tiptoed to the top of the stairs, listening to what was happening downstairs. What she heard shocked her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. John was on the phone with someone. From what she could hear, she assumed he was calling the police because of the strange man pounding on their door. It seemed a bit extreme to her, but she was glad John was taking their safety seriously. She would soon find out what was really going on. Peeking out the window to see if the strange man was gone, John didn't notice his girlfriend eavesdropping on his conversation at the top of the stairs. After just a few minutes, he could hear the sirens approaching in the distance. There was still no sign of the strange man, but he had the doorbell camera footage to show the police. He wondered how Emily would react to the police's presence. 2 police officers quickly arrived at John's house, alerted about someone apparently trying to break in or harass the residents. They were let in, and John explained the entire situation, telling how the strange man had left as soon as he heard the sirens. However, that wasn't the only reason John had called the police. He told them about his other concerns regarding his girlfriend, upstairs in the bedroom, where Max had joined her. Emily heard John calling for her. She hesitated for a moment to come down, appreciating the safety of having Max by her side, making her feel better. What if the strange man was still out there? But after John called for her 2 more times, saying the police were here and wanted to speak with her, she decided to come down. She assumed it was to talk about the intruder, but she was very wrong. When she came downstairs, Emily was greeted by 2 slightly confused-looking police officers. They all looked at her with a strange kind of suspicion on their faces. Starting to get nervous, she asked John what was going on. Was this about the strange man? When he answered, she couldn't believe what her boyfriend had started to say, somewhat awkwardly. John explained that he had called the police because of Emily's increasingly suspicious behavior. He told her that he had discovered Max used to be a drug detection dog at the airport. He then said he knew about her strange trip to the gas station and the text he saw, and how it made him more suspicious. He said he just wanted to know what she was hiding from him. Emily looked at her boyfriend, incredulous, hurt, and angry at everything he had just said. How could he have jumped to such harsh conclusions based on so little evidence? Her boyfriend thought she was involved with drugs? He was looking at her phone and following her? All of this was based on some strange behavior from a dog that wasn't even theirs. She sighed and let herself fall into a chair, unable to believe John was involving the police in this. "I'll tell you the truth, John. Because this is crazy." She couldn't hide how hurt she was by his wild accusations and invasions of her privacy. Even so, she sat down and told him she had read an article about a dog sensing that its owner was pregnant. Emily began to wonder if that was why Max started acting that way. So, she drove to the gas station to take a pregnancy test. To her surprise, her hunch was correct, and she was pregnant. However, she was afraid to tell him because her family had a history of premature miscarriages. Emily wanted to get past the dangerous stage before letting him know. The energy in the room was strange when she finished speaking. John felt terrible for his accusations, though the police congratulated them. It was clear they were not impressed with his actions. Max leaned into Emily's side, and she petted his ears for comfort. Emily hoped she and John could recover from this mess and everything would end well. What do you think of this story? Do you think they acted right? Leave your comment below to know your opinion. It is very important to us. If you liked this exciting story, help us by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Thank you very much for watching us and see you in the next story. Suddenly, she backed out of the building. Unfortunately for John, he couldn't see where she went. She was gone for about 20 minutes, then got back in the car and drove home, hurrying to get there before her. John tried to greet Emily normally when she walked in the door. He didn't want to raise suspicions with his girlfriend, even though he hadn't caught anything too terrible by following her. Her action didn't sit well with John. He knew he needed proof of what he thought was happening, but since he had no proof of anything, John decided to stay quiet about the situation. But John couldn't stop thinking about the strange message and how Emily had sneaked off to the gas station. What possible reason could she have for doing something like that? None of the options were good. She was either cheating or smuggling some kind of contraband. He wanted to trust her. After all, she was still the woman he fell in love with, but it was hard to do that when she was sneaking around behind his back. John didn't know what to believe anymore. John began to wonder if he should just ask Emily about his concerns. It would be better to talk about it and get some answers instead of staying silent and worried. However, as soon as he tried to bring it up, she got very nervous and interrupted him. This only made John more suspicious. Why would she shut him down like that? But soon, he would discover the truth. Emily started staying home less and less. Often, she wasn't home to feed Max but always had ready excuses. It didn't help that he kept rubbing his head on her legs and jumping on her every time she sat down, making her quickly irritated and nervous around him. Things were quickly spiraling out of control. Emily started staying out later and later, claiming it was for work. John wanted to think she was avoiding Max, but something inside him wasn't sure about that. Wanting to distract himself and maybe find out more about Max's work at the airport, John decided to track down the police officer the dog had worked with. If there was one person who could tell the truth about Max's work and John's suspicions about the dog's behavior around Emily, it would be the officer. However, this turned out to be much more complicated than John had assumed. It turned out that the police force didn't have the habit of providing this kind of personal information to just anyone. John understood, of course, but it was still frustrating to hit another dead end in his quest for answers about the strange behavior of both the dog and his girlfriend. John decided to go straight to the source, the airport. He wanted to find any member of airport security. His goal was to ask if they had heard of a dog named Max, a Doberman who worked there a few years ago. But his investigation mission didn't go exactly as he had planned. As it turned out, asking too many random questions to airport security about a Doberman dog was considered strange behavior. In less than half an hour, John was escorted out of the airport, after being warned several times to stop his line of questioning and that no one understood what he was asking about. But by that point, John didn't want to listen. All he could think about was finding out the truth. He needed answers from somewhere. Things took a very strange turn later that same day. John had just returned home after being kicked out of the airport, finding that Emily was again not home, and Max had chewed one of the couch cushions. While sweeping up the mess, his phone started ringing. The caller ID was anonymous, so John had no idea who the person calling in could be. Nervous but curious, he answered the phone, being greeted by a low male voice. "Are you the guy taking care of my old police dog, Max?" John hesitated, not knowing if he should answer the question. There was something strangely familiar about the voice. He swore it was one of Emily's friends who sounded similar. "Yes, that's me," John finally replied. The response was immediate. "What are you doing? You're lost, kid." The call was cut off, leaving John staring at the phone in shock. Who was this strange man? John was a bit disturbed by the strange and threatening phone call. He couldn't shake the feeling that he recognized the voice. Could it be one of Emily's friends trying to keep her away? But if so, why? What could she be involved in? There were so many strange things happening that John felt like he was losing his mind. Would he find the answers? Trying to distract himself, John took Max for a long run, hoping to exhaust both of them so they could get a good night's sleep. When he got home several hours later, Emily was waiting for him, and she wasn't happy about the couch. She asked where he had been all day, but John didn't want to tell her the whole truth. He vaguely said he went out for a run, but Emily was quick to point out that he didn't do that all day. How ironic, John thought, his frustrations with the day rising sharply. She's getting mad at me for not telling the whole truth, when she's been acting so suspiciously lately. John couldn't help but resent his girlfriend for treating him this way. The two started arguing, mostly about Max and the couch cushion. But the bigger problem was simmering beneath the surface. He almost demanded to know why she went alone to the gas station. Max began pacing around the room nervously, ears up. Then, suddenly, he started barking aggressively, throwing himself at the front door, stopping the fight. Emily and John looked at each other in shock, knowing something must be very wrong for Max to behave this way. John ordered Emily to go upstairs. She did. It seemed like something terrible was about to happen. Checking the doorbell camera footage, John was horrified to see a strange man he had never seen before, dressed entirely in black. The man was pounding on the door, demanding to see Emily. For John, after several very stressful days, this was the last straw. He had to do something about this quickly before it could get even more out of control. Even with Max throwing himself at the front door, barking and growling, John decided he couldn't handle this alone. Since the intimidating man was looking for Emily, the safest option was to call the police. Maybe seeing that the police were now involved in everything happening behind the scenes of their lives would finally make Emily tell the truth. Plus, the police would scare off this strange man. Meanwhile, upstairs, Emily was hiding in the bedroom, wondering what the hell was going on. She had no idea what John was planning downstairs, or who the strange man at the door could be. John had been acting strangely lately, it might have something to do with this. Should she have told John the truth, or was it already too late? Suddenly, the barking and pounding on the door stopped, much to Emily's surprise.